buy back in the day at comic book stores.
It's priceless. I'm holding it like this.
And it's mine.
I know.
I got it.
Oh, okay, you do, huh?
Yeah.
All right.
It's a little bit easier to read, and this is the paper's not yellowed.
Are there email voices or male voices?
Yes, all of the females,
Okay,
sure.
great.
Facts.
If y'all have, if I'm sure everybody here has probably seen American Splendor, the movie with Paul Giamatti. If you have not seen it, it's actually really great. It's really great. It's Kathy and I are friends of Daniel Johnston's, and a while ago they made a documentary about Daniel Johnston. And while they were making it, we thought, oh no, they're going to trash him and drag him over the coals. And they actually did a beautiful job. It was beautiful. So the same thing with this. You know, they could have really torn Harvey apart. But it's beautiful. It's very loving. And this part, the Alice Quinn part of that movie, is, I think, one of the best parts of the whole film. Okay, Saturday morning. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Saturday morning, I'm standing in line at the bank. It isn't moving. Everyone's passed by the delay.
Pissed.
Everyone's pissed by the delay. On Saturday, you want to get on about your business, right? In front of me, an attractive woman about my age catches my eye. Not that she's that fantastic looking, but there's something kind of nice about her, and also something vaguely familiar. A lady comes into the bank and starts groping around. After a second, I realize she's blind. I start thinking about whether I should help her, but before I can make a move, the woman in front of me has taken hold of her arm and is guiding her. She unsnaps one of the ropes and positions the blind woman at the end of the line smoothly. If I'd have done it, I probably would have tripped somebody. The line gets moving again. I take care of business and start to leave, but this woman stops me.
Aren't you Harvey Pekar?
Yeah.
I'm Alice Quinn.
Alice Quinn? Oh my God. What a time to meet Alice Quinn. Just a couple of months after my second marriage had busted up. I'd known Alice Quinn more than 20 years ago. I'd gone to college for a little while, and a few times I'd talked to her in a group of people while we were sitting around the student union. I don't remember ever talking to her alone, though. I'd heard she had a terrific crush on a guy I knew that I thought had nothing on the ball. I knew that I thought had nothing on the ball. He thought she was a nuisance, and the whole business really bothered me. He's such a moron, and she's so bright and cute. He doesn't even deserve her. Why does she throw herself at him? How come women like that don't dig me? So anyway, I'd never forgotten this girl. Every once in a while, I'd think about her, how we'd have done if we'd went together. You know how you daydream. And anyway, there she was, standing in front of me. Wow! So we got into this rap telling each other what we've been up to during the past 20 years. As she was talking, I was looking at her hand. Damn it, she had on a wedding ring. So she says she needs to get home, but she lives right by the bank and invites me to fall by to continue our conversation. That was cool because people were eavesdropping on us in the bank anyway. We went back to her house. Man, she knew about my comic books and that I'd been a jazz critic. It really made me feel nice. She even had some of my comics. We get back to her place and she introduced me to her old man, who seems like a nice guy. He was a lot older than she was, or else he aged a lot quicker. Anyway, I looked better than he did. And that made me feel good. Yeah, I know, all is vanity. He was just going and he needed some bread, and she gave him just about every cent she had on her. So then we sat down and talked about all kinds of stuff, like novels. I'm reading this book by Dreiser now, Jenny Gerhardt. Boy, I hope it doesn't end like so many of those naturalist novels, with someone getting crushed to earth by forces he can't control. It got to be a real formula, ending with those guys. They're really into melodrama. And comics. You know how, you didn't know Crumb, huh? He lived around here when you were going to college. Right in the university area, as a matter of fact. And people. You're Irish, right? So maybe you know about these Irish women that never marry. They just stay at home and take care of the old folks. They're really into making sacrifices and doing good works. Seems like there's a lot of them. I know the Irish birth rate is low. Like this lady I work with. If she ain't got nothing else to do, she looks for a paraplegic or a drunk to get a cup of coffee for. I wonder if she ain't taking it too far. I wonder if that's healthy.
Well, maybe that's all she feels she can do to be useful now. She looks at her life, she thinks about the boy she could have married at 20.
After a while, one of her kids came down and joined the conversation. He was okay, polite and intelligent. Then it got to be time to go, so she said maybe she'd have me over to dinner, and I said, thanks, I'd be glad to come, but if you really want to do me a favor, introduce me to your single girlfriends. You gotta be pretty smart though. I gotta be able to talk to them.
They'd have to be smarter than average, huh?
Seeing that woman after all those years was a painful experience. I'd originally met her during a really difficult time in my life, and now I was living through another one. Becoming reacquainted was like opening an old wound. Then there was the momentary elation of meeting her at a time when I was so lonely, only to find that she was apparently happily married. But look, how ridiculous I was. It's great if she's happily married. More power to her and her family. And after all, I didn't know the woman, but I was idealizing her. She might be a witch, but probably she's pretty nice. So anyway, I go home, take care of some things, and then finish reading Jenny Gerhardt. It turned out to be a real good, way better than I expected. It turned out to be real good, way better than I expected. The book covers a number of years in the lives of these two people, Lester Kane and Jenny Gerhardt, who was his mistress. Lester dies in the end, but at least he's old and dies a dignified natural death. He don't croak as a pathetic bum and get buried in Potter's Field like Hearst would in Sister Carrie. I was all alone that weekend. I thought about Jenny Gerhardt and Alice Quinn, and decades of faces ran through my mind. I felt like crying. Life seemed so sweet and so sad and so hard to let go of in the end. But this is Monday. I went to work, hustled some records, came home, and wrote this. Tonight I'll finish a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. Life goes on. Every day is a new deal. Keep working and maybe something will turn up.
Yeah.
That's so great.
Okay.
Your turn.
I know, I've got to whittle down my list. So I think that I'm going to do, it's funny, a lot of the ones that really stand out are ones that they end up doing in the movie because they're so beautiful.
Quandary.
I'm going to do that one. I'm going to end on it. I'm
That's
going to end
beautiful.
big.
Beautiful,
That's a great
yeah,
one,
that's
yeah.
it. Yeah,
Anyway, since you guys stood up, I guess I'll stand up too, even though I thought I was going to sit down.
So testify. sister.
Yeah, I'm going to testify. Anyway, I was thinking about what are some of the things that I think are so incredible about Harvey. And as someone who has lived through times that are gone now, the fact that he is able to chronicle and capture, especially in the art, which he didn't even do, but he directed artists to do for him, he really captures the 70s and the 80s in America, which are times that if you weren't there, you almost wouldn't believe they were real. And I was trying to explain this to my husband, and I was like, when I got out of high school, downtown Austin was boarded up and deserted, and you could rent a whole building for $50 a month. And people are like, I can't believe that was ever true. And it's like, no, it was really true. And that's why all the punk rock clubs were downtown, was people would just rent these buildings and have the power turned on and try and put on shows or do plays. And then you have a situation where it's so cheap. Art flourishes. It just does. And in the depressed Cleveland of the 70s and 80s that he's showing, even just in the background scenes, you see a lot of obviously not terribly expensive places to live and have businesses, but also hippies and street fairs and some of the kind of things that people were trying to do during that time when things, I think that there was a lot of sense of possibility even in places like Cleveland that were Rust Belt and sort of declining. It still wasn't absolute dog-eat-dog difficult to do stuff. And there was a lot of this is gone from Austin now, although it was still here. So there's little pieces of it here and there, like maybe the Broken Spoke and things like that, where you can see what the past was like. And a lot of the art that's in Harvey's stuff, you can see the old Cleveland of the turn of the century, the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, and old people who are still kind of walking their same patterns through these Jewish bakeries and ethnic neighborhoods. And it's really interesting. And one of the things that Harvey does is he puts himself, he casts himself as an everyman, but I really do think that he has a real poet's ear for what he's observing. And that's one reason why his comics are so beautiful, is that he's able to capture these poignant little crystalline moments, just talking to ordinary people on the street, in stores, at his job, that almost can stand alone the way that the comic panels do. And we've been reading pretty many longer ones, but he has lots of them that are only one page long that are really beautiful. And he's also beautifully honest. And sometimes Dave thinks that he casts himself as a more unlikable person than he really is. Like he's cheap, he's vain, he's paranoid, all these different things. But a lot of the time I think he's just trying so hard to just tell the unvarnished truth about how he feels. And if I have time, I'll read you one of these comments called Rip Off Chick, where he goes, yeah, I just wanted to get laid. He just talks about his relationship with this girl that he looks down on. And he's just really just saying, like, this is what really happened. This is what I did. And yeah, I know I'm no saint and stuff like that. And he also does a good job of portraying the ugliness of poverty, which he lived in for most of his life. And so did I. And I think it really warmed my heart when I first especially discovered him, that he was actually drawing the kind of interiors that I lived in, and that most of my friends lived in an unapologetic way, because in our culture, I think that a lot of times you don't want to show what a loser you are, because then everyone's going to think you're a loser. And so you try to make things more exciting or more interesting, or you tart things up a bit. But in some of these things, he just shows himself in this like kind of barren, dirty apartment, like getting naked in and out of the bathtub, with all of his like imperfections, in this like crummy flat, cold water flat. And I think that if people were to look back on, how people look back at television from the 60s and they're like, wow, that girl lives in a really great apartment. She's a part-time actress. Things must have been really easy then. Well, no, people didn't live like that any more than the 6 people and friends had that great apartment, What was really happening was people were living in crappy, old, unheated, yucky, dirty apartments with lots of other people all crammed in there. And it's not really represented in the art that's come out of our time, how people really lived, other than upper middle class and ridiculously wealthy people. So that's another thing that I really love about him. He's willing to portray himself as an asshole, a flunky, and a failure, and kind of in doing that, he kind of shows us that those things maybe aren't as absolute as we think they are. And one of the things that Harvey does is he's got a great ear for dialect. And he writes a lot of old Jewish people, and he does black people, and he does himself with his Midwestern accent. And I'm going to try to reproduce these faithfully because he's really good at it, but I'll just do the best I can. And this one's called Common Sense. And I've got to get the actual book out because I can't read it off there, it's too blurry. Here it is. So our man is riding on the bus. And this one in particular has some really beautiful artwork of like urban Cleveland at the time, which I'm assuming is around 86. Cut them off, cut them off. If you don't cut them off, they ain't never gonna let you in. You've got to drive through 2 colleges on this line, and you better be careful about them students, because they always got their heads in the clouds and they don't be looking where they going. Like I was just reading in the paper about a student at Case Western the other day. Stepped out in the street without looking and got hit by a car. Tore his ass up. Back in 70, 71, an old army buddy of mine was going to college down here and walked across the street with his nose in a book. Blam! A bread truck hit him. Tore his ass up. He was too old to be going to school anyway. Education is okay, but you gotta have common sense too. My friends don't believe me, but believe it or not, I got tired of them hoes coming on the bus and messing with me. You get sick of them after a while. I only weighed 162 when I started, thought I was light for the job, but now I'm as big as the rest of them. You gotta watch for them people. When they get full of methadone, they get blind, liable to walk into the side of the bus. You taking him to school? Oh, sorry. You taking him to school, ma'am? I'll tell you when your stop is. With all the bussing and whatnot, kids ain't learning nothing in school these days. Teachers can't teach neither. They give them a test and 90% of them failed. These kids all use computers, can't even add. Yeah, them computers ain't no good. I was in a store the other day, and when it come to figuring my bill, one computer said 8079 and the other said 7979. When was I going to school? When I was going to school, we didn't have no computers. Didn't have nothing but them Chinese things. When I went to school, we didn't have nothing but all heads. Well, we didn't have nothing but our heads too, but once in a while they'd let us break out them things. From here we stop at every corner. Well, not every corner, but almost every corner. Excuse me, but do you stop at 107th? Yep, it's still on the agenda. Hey fella, here's your stop. Thanks. The bus in the uptown lane has a red light and is stopped, but our man hasn't noticed that traffic in the downtown lane has a green light and is moving. Consequently, he's trapped briefly in the middle of the street. The light changes and he gets all the way across. That boy had his head in the clouds. He wasn't paying attention to what he was doing. Almost got killed. I told you about people without any common sense. Let's see. And this is the one that me and Joe argued about because we both wanted to do it because it's one of our most favorite ones.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Hypothetical Quandary. Let me see if I
Not
can
quandary,
find
but quandary.
Thornberry.
it. Here it is. And this has got some of really beautiful illustrations. It's by Crumb, but it's not quite as cartoony as he often can be.
It's not as crummy.
It's not as crummy, exactly. Sunday morning. That woman from that big publisher never got back to me. Guess she wasn't serious. Probably wanted a free book or was too lazy to look for my stuff on the stands or something. That's how old this is. They used to sell comic books at newsstands. But what if she'd been serious? What if they'd have published my stuff and it sold well and I'd have made enough to support myself as a writer? How important is that to me? It'd be nice not to have to get up every morning and go to work, to be able to read or work on stories and articles whenever I felt like it. Oops. But then I'd sort of be out in the struggle, sort of in an ivory tower watching the mainstream of life go by,